Hey strangers, episode 19. This is my lunch break, by the way, as you can tell by the fact that it's light outside. And I'm not under the harsh reflective glare of electricity, one of the greatest discoveries ever, without which we'd still be playing music using parchment and metal things into rolling boxes. And all my favourite music would sound like ding 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 ding, and just you'd never get to hear an electric guitar. You'd only ever get to hear an acoustic guitar, and that would be a terrible thing, both for my sanity and for the rest of mankind, obviously. So part two, going to go through the 10, I think, best albums, or the 10 most important albums to me. Yesterday we did number 20 due to number 11. Today we're going to start at number 10. And number 10, this is an item you will have seen before. It is the Pet Shop Boys Actually album, released in 1987. Probably the first pop thing I ever really got into, actually. This band. It was golden summer of 1987, in the way that 1982 was a golden summer for films. And this album, I think, really just expanded my worldview a little. As I kind of said previously, I was madly into film soundtracks. I was madly into the sounds that went alongside movies, the songs and the score that went alongside those, the drama and the rise, the use of electronics, especially a soundtrack or two, which I'm going to mention later on. But also, I was very interested in the sounds of electronics. I was very interested in orchestras, and lo and behold, this album covers both of them. So, my favourite song on this is "It Couldn't Happen Here," which is side 1, track 2, orchestrated by Angelo Badalamenti, who did the soundtracks to Blue Velvet and also Twin Peaks, although he hadn't done Twin Peaks at that point. I think they asked Ennio Morricone, and he turned them down. And for me, I think really, I heard this album, and what I heard was probably for the first time is the way that music was able to comment and reflect upon the world that I lived in. And also I love listening to movie soundtracks and listening to music that took me out of the world in which I lived, and helps me live in a slightly different reality. I also, loved songs that were able to comment upon and expand my understanding of the world around me. This is a fantastic album. It is sequentially absolutely perfect. I think I've mentioned that a couple of days before. It's also it tells almost a story around a self-contained romance in the modern world. So, for example, it starts with One More Chance. It's got What Have I Done to Deserve This? Then goes to Shopping, Rent, Hit Music. Now, as a suite of songs, each one of those is in the perfect spot for it, and ends. The ending of each song sounds like it's the next part of the beginning of the next song. Lyrically, there was so much to chew on in here. There's some great songs about relationships, such as What Have I Done to Deserve This, Rent, I Want to Wake Up, Heart is, I think it was originally intended to be a Madonna song, but she never got to hear it. Even something like I Want to Wake Up, side 2, track 3 is traditionally known as, the dull point in an album, but this one is just, it's got a fantastic lyric about I think I stand by the kitchen sink, the radio playing Tainted Love and Love Is Strange, and that was my life. At that point is I stood by a kitchen sinks and the radio was playing, and pop singers didn't really talk about subjects in such banality, and yet it was profound in its banality. It was kind of saying, well, everyone has moments like this. There are songs that are about things that people just don't sing about. King's Cross is, amongst many other things, about commuting, and I stood by only last night I found myself lost, standing by a station called King's Cross, and the man at the back of the queue was said to feel the smack of firm government. And it, if you were poor, if you were struggling for money, if you were relying upon government assistance, the smack of firm government is really what happened, is that you were sent to the back of the queue. Even recently, the odious and repulsive Dominic Cummings said, and I quote, that the ballerinas can go to the back of the fucking queue when it came to getting government assistance during the COVID-19 pandemic. So these songs are still current and real. You know, the artists, artists, musicians, ballerinas, people that created culture were sent to the back of the queue to feel the smack of firm government, because the only thing that mattered then, as matters now to the eyes of lots of people, is pure, beautiful, raw profit. No art, no culture, no money, no beauty. And let's not forget that the earth without art is and you know, it saddens me really that, you know, mankind is still fighting the same battles that it was fighting 30 years ago, still having to battle the eternal conflict between, you know, good and evil, kindness and compassion versus, you know, criticism, judgment, and cruelty. This song really, this whole album, I mean, for me, encapsulated what it was like to grow up in 80s Britain. In a way that very, very few other artists ever really caught the mood of. It's just a fantastic record. And it's got, for all its sins, perhaps the funniest album cover art I think I've ever seen, which is a very tired Neil Tennant yawning. So that's number 10. And that was the first record that really kind of expanded my worldview. At that point is that, you know, pop music was capable of great art and vision, of being able to educate, inform, and entertain as public service broadcasting. So now, number 9 on my list is perhaps unexpected, very recently, but this is not really actually the album which made the difference. It's a representation of what this album made. Now I'm just going to quickly, maybe that'll make a difference, maybe not, I don't know, clean a finger mark off my lens. This is John Carpenter's anthology, which is not, I don't have on vinyl. And what this represents is modern day re-recordings of major parts of his soundtrack work. Now, his soundtrack work is generally really hard to find and really expensive on either CD. It's recently been repressed on super limited edition vinyl editions, and you know, I've got a couple of picture discs, singles, EPs of his major film themes that he recorded in 2016. So Escape from New York, The Fog, and as you can see, Halloween and Assault on Precinct 13. Now both of these 12-inch picture discs, limited to 2,000 copies. I think they were, about £10 or something. Now, where this comes from is that, you know, at some point in the future, I'm going to talk about my, you know, great abiding love of horror movies. Is that John Carpenter recorded and made the soundtrack scores for his films, and these were really kind of revelatory for me, because it wasn't about scoring the action that was happening on screen. It was about setting a mood and a theme using electronic technology, synthesizers, sequencers, keyboards, all that type of stuff. You know, and the songs themselves were thematic as opposed to score. So in terms of, you know, the bit when Indiana Jones goes over the canyon and you get the big roar of the orchestra going da 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 da. I don't even know why I sang that. What you don't have with this is that type of stuff. What you do is you have mood pieces, and it was from those, you know, the John Carpenter soundtrack work that I really kind of understood that, you know, the world was very different. You know, score and music didn't just have to be, you know, the sound that was reflecting what was happening immediately in front of you. It could reflect other things indeed. From there, you know, my horizons expanded, as I said. Pet Shop Boys, New Order, loads of other bands that created music with drama and tension and pull and release in there. Now, number 8 is this band, The Wonder Stuff. This is the Hup album from 1989, which is at the bottom signed by I think 3 members of the band, being Miles, Martin, and the other Martin. Now the 2 Martins have left the group, and one of them, Martin Jolks, the drummer, sadly died in a bicycle accident about 15 years ago. This is the copy that I bought from Woolworths in Cottridge in Birmingham, England, in 1989. $6.99, well spent, I tell you, well spent. And this album was kind of the first thing that really opened the door to the whole big bad world of Indian indie music, I suppose is what it's called. But the indie is not really. It doesn't describe a style. It describes an attitude, a mindset. It describes the way of looking at the world from an independent perspective, and not necessarily accepting the first thing that you're given because that's what you've got to do. Now, this album is half kind of grebo punk indie rock, and the other half of it is kind of folky. It's deeper. It's got more strings to it in terms. It's got a bigger scope. It changed my view of the world and opened me up to far more gentle music. Whereas when I was 16, everything had to be really, really intense, man, massively intense. And obviously, if a musician is making music and he doesn't sound like it's intense, then to my perspective, well, look, you can't even hold your own attention and you're making it. Well, how do you expect me to pay attention to it? This album is not, in my opinion, their best album because it straddles the two styles and it's got two quite distinct flavours around it. Whereas the subsequent album, Never Loved Elvis, is more fully with its foot in the rock and folk camp. This is an album that really kind of broadened my horizons a little bit. Let's just insert the gif of the guy just going. That should expand really what this is. It's also got some great lyrics on it. So it's got some songs which only as I have become older have I realised how good they are. Songs like Cartoon Boyfriend, Unfaithful, Golden Green, songs about jealousy and betrayal and things like that. So when I listened to this, I didn't have enough life experiences to really understand or comprehend the songs that were on there, except as abstract concepts, because they were recorded and written by a 23-year-old, and I was not 23. I was 15, 16. And so this album was beyond my life experiences. But as I've grown older, I've still got the relationship with that album. And the thing I should also point out is almost all of these that I'm mentioning are records that not just had a huge impact upon me when I was younger, but also have had a massive impact upon me as I grew older, and helped me chart my relationship through time with songs that really acted as maps and markers on the way, or maps and legends, as R.E.M. would have said it. So album 7. Now, album 7, closely contested, could have been one of two by this band, but I've chosen this one. I've chosen Take Fountain by The Wedding Present, which came out in 2005. This is the vinyl edition, which was only released in 2015, because when it came out it was only on CD. It wasn't even on cassette, just CD and download, ladies and jelly spoons. When this came out in 2005, it's a breakup album. That's a trend that you will have seen in a couple of other records which have come out. But what this one does is it kind of, I could have chosen Sea Monsters, which again is one of the best breakup albums of all time. But I chose Take Fountain because when Sea Monsters came out in 1990, much as I loved it, it came out in 91, but much as I loved it, I hadn't experienced perhaps as much life as I did. So I came to The Wedding Present as a fan later in life, after I got a few more knocks from the University of Life, as they might call it. I hate the phrase the University of Life. We're all graduates from the University of Life unless you're dead, right? But I had a few knocks and scrapes on the way from various people. And this album came out in 2005, and at some point, probably around 2006, 2007, I heard it and everything clicked into place. Now, 2007 was a terrible year for me in many ways. I started the year, with a job and a relationship, and I ended the year with a different job and no relationship, and it was pretty ugly. And the different job, by the way, was not of my choosing. It was a thing that was imposed upon me. I then went through a redundancy process, and a redundancy in some companies is really a very nice way of saying, we don't like you anymore. You're not awful. We can't fire you, but we want you to go because you are somebody who asks too many questions, or somebody that doesn't quite fit in with the company as it is anymore. So redundancy, I wasn't redundant. Absolutely not. There was still loads of work that was left to be done on an ongoing basis. And I delivered results, good results, good numbers, and yet because I asked too many questions of too many people, and I wasn't prepared to just sit in a meeting and go, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full. I've been made redundant a couple of times in my career, and at the time that I first started listening to this album, that was an experience I had. Is that, you know, effectively there are two major relationships in the context of our lives. There's our personal lives and our professional lives. In both personal and professional lives, you know, you have to try and have a good balance, and you have to be with an employer or a partner who is, you know, complementary to you and where you are and where you're going in your life. And sometimes that doesn't quite fit. Now, if you split up with somebody, you know, you still got a job. Generally, if you've got a job, you continue to have a job, you know, unless you're shagging the boss. Never done that. Don't shit where you eat, by the way. But what will happen is that, you know, in a professional environment, if your professional relationship ceases, you know, you're faced with an immediate amount of problems around things like money, food, rent, where do I live, what do I eat, how do I eat, can I afford to eat, all these questions which are really big and important. Whereas, you know, if you're in a relationship, and that comes to an end, as long as you've still got a job, you still, you know, those basic questions around survival that sit on Haslow's hierarchy of needs, are not necessarily, you know, immediate and pressing concerns. So I came to this album in 2007, when I was really rethinking my life, or parts of my life were being rethought for me by other people. And this is a fantastic breakup album that has a maturity and a depth and a scope to it. Whereas Sea Monsters, which is, you know, almost like the prequel to this in some respects, Sea Monsters is a very raw record, which is very open around, you know, feelings and hurt. This was perhaps, you know, the same kind of subject matter dealt with 15 years later, by the, you know, the same band of a sort, although most of the personnel had changed. And it's got some of the, you know, some of the best songs that I think the boy Gedge has ever written. And John Peel said, you know, he has written some of the best love songs of all time, and you know, You Are Right, or more correctly, and you know, that's that. I can't disagree with him on that. You know, there is nobody who, in my opinion, has written better songs about relationships than David Gedge. And this is, you know, him picking up the threads of what happened after Sea Monsters, but with 15 years of extra experiences. It's a very broad, wide-reaching album around relationships, and it's fantastic. It's probably the best thing that he's done, actually. I could have chosen Sea Monsters, I could have chosen Going, but I chose this. It's got one of the best songs ever written on it, which is Interstate 5, which has got a fantastic intro and a fantastic outro, and it lasts about 10 minutes, and yet it never lets up. Really opened my eyes, this, and, you know, really helped me at a difficult time in my life. Number 6, this bad boy. This is The Holy Bible by the Manic Street Preachers. There are many versions of this album, but this one is mine. This is the 2014 Record Store Day picture disc edition of the album that features the American mix. So there are 2 versions of this album. One, I think, was mixed by Tom Lord Alge, and another one, I can't find the mixing credits on here, was remixed for the American purposes. The difference between the 2 albums is sonic in terms of production, so the performances are almost always the same, although I think Yes has a different ending on the American version than the UK edition. So let's pick out. This is the Canadian CD, by the way, of the Holy Bible, which was released in January 1995. I think the American edition never actually made it into production. It was released in Canada a couple of weeks earlier, and then one of the members of the band, Richie, went missing. As a result, the band cancelled the release to the subsequent tour. So the American version is mixed by Tom Lord Alge. It's you know, the American version, the equivalent is you know, the British edition here. And again, I'm going to have to look very quickly through the credits to see who produced the British edition. This is a picture disc CD, which was, I think, the first pressing of the album. Now, this is exciting, isn't it? Let's have a look at you looking through and who's doing that. Again, I don't quite know where the production credits are on this, actually. I don't know if it tells you who mixed it or anything. Can't tell, don't quite know. I think it might be the band's. I think it's David Aringa. I think may have produced it. Not quite sure, but the difference between the two is very similar. So the Holy Bible, the UK version, is like being in a very small claustrophobic room, and this is like being in a wide and deserted plain, a desert where there's nothing around for miles around. Even though the songs are the same, the mixes are slightly different. All the songs are in the same place in the same order on the album. Now for me, this was a very, I think the big draw for me wasn't just the sound here. It wasn't just the the post-punk kind of complicated, dense, multi-layered songs where there's lots of tempo shifts. It's also about the lyrics, actually. And the lyrics to it are really not just misanthropic, but they're almost academic in their dissection of modern society as it was in 1994. So it pulled back the layer and looked at corruption, for human fragility, human weakness. It's got some stunning images that would be hailed as great works of poetry had they not been sung. There's a lyric which is like a tiny animal curled into a quarter circle, and that's a incredibly powerful image. And then all of a sudden, that kind of brings with it a whole bunch of different aspects of reality around God, and then there's songs like Mausoleum, Die in the Summertime, This Is Yesterday is one of the best lyrics that's ever been written. Do not listen to a word I say, just listen to the things that I can keep silent. The only way to get approval is by exploiting the very thing that cheapens me. Now, if you've ever had if you've ever worked in a job where you kind of think, well, I can do this, but it's not necessarily something I enjoy, or if you're, that is the only way to get approval is by exploiting the very thing that cheapens me, selling labour inside the capitalist market. So to me, it's like a very firm academic and intellectual refutation of the structure of society by exposing its flaws and hypocrisies. It's not an easy listen. And I really listened to this album an awful lot in the winter of 1995 after my mother had died, when I was trying to understand how everything was happening to me. It was comforting. It was really difficult, but it was comforting to say, well, actually, you're not alone in this. And there's that comfort. I miss the comfort of being sad, which is in the Nirvana song from In Utero. It was the same kind of thing, as there was a comfort in knowing that other people were feeling and thinking some of the same kind of thoughts that I was. It's a heavy record, but really, really influential. And possibly the nearest thing to a work of art that's been put onto a vinyl disc in the history of anything, really. And by art, I mean something that could be hung in the tape as opposed to something that's fantastic. Album 5, Suede, Bloodsports, came out in 2013. Suede came to a difficult ending in 2012, and it really felt like maybe the band had ended or quit after later than they should have done. Jarvis Cocker has a saying that the best time to be at a party, or the best time to leave a party, is always 2 minutes before you actually do. You should always leave a party sooner before you realise you should have left sooner. Which Suede didn't necessarily do with A New Morning, because A New Morning was an album almost made by committee. This is not their best album, but the most important one to me, completely reclaiming the band's identity, their vitality, and also showing that some bands, they don't grow old with dignity, whereas Suede were able to track the change that we have as people. Suede fans, if you were 25 when A New Morning came out, you were 36 when Bloodsports came out, and I was 39 when this album came out, smack bang in the middle of a midlife crisis, and there was some heavy shit going on outside of all the usual things. I was dealing with physical changes relating to aging. I was dealing with professional changes, some of similar to things which I've alluded to previously. I was dealing with health matters, both of people that I loved and cared for. Were battling health issues, incurable but not untreatable, and I was kind of like really starting to lose hope. I was like, I could see that the future that I had when this record came out, it just seemed to be a slow and steady drive downhill with more misery and happiness and everything that went with it. This album gave me a huge sense of hope, is that, you know, you can grow old and you can do so in a dignified fashion and you can still remain vital. Now, one of the things that always annoys me about music is when people say, oh, I only like the early stuff. You know, there are some trades, some areas where perhaps you are only really, really good when you're really young because of the physical limitations of it. You know, a 60-year-old footballer is almost definitely not going to be as good as a 20-year-old. But, you know, when it comes to playing music, you know, the fact you've got 40 years experience playing music when you're at the age of 60, you know, you should be better than you ever were when you were a 20-year-old. You know, you should be more fluent in it. And what this album does is it really grasps what it is to be older. You know, what happens once you get a little bit older, you know, because people always have this idea of you know, artists frozen in aspic forever, and they put them in a box and they can't ever get out of the box. You know, people are still annoyed that some bands have changed. You know, some people are annoyed that Depeche Mode don't write songs like Vince Clarke did in 1981. Some people think that, you know, a band should never change, never evolve, should always ever and only do the only ever one thing. You know, whereas Suede, it's like, we're just going to make the best record that we can. And to me, Bloodsports is, you know, a very strong album. I think that the whole thing around it and the title and everything to do with it is related to, you know, the concept of, you know, a relationship being almost a blood sport as such. That you know, every song on this is around, you know, love and longing and loss, but in the context of, well, what happens when you get a bit older? And, you know, you've still got to deal with things like love and longing and loss and so on and so forth. And it's got some brilliant songs, as good. Some of these songs are as good as anything they've ever done. You know, Barriers is an amazing song, and I mean, to me, it's kind of like it really sounds like the thrill and the rush that you get when you start having a relationship. You know, and it says we'll jump over the barriers together, and it's on this huge, wonderful kind of like ascending, spindly guitar riff. And then, you know, there's was it? And they touch you like no one touched you. When you broke, they were there for you, and their kindness is not a weakness. Not when they are there for you. And will they love you the way I loved you? We jumped over barriers. You know, I mean, that's it, isn't it? That's what relationships are. It's about people jumping over barriers together, whatever the obstacles that are in the face of the relationship, and tackling them head on. This is the kind of the more fancy box set version. It's got an LP, it's got a 7-inch, it's got a CD, it's got a colour booklet. It's and there's nothing about this album that is not perfect for what it is. You know, it really gave me hope that as a person I could grow older, and I could do so without becoming crap. You know, the thing when you get older is people think, well, you're automatically going to go crap, aren't you? You know, if you're a band, you go crap. You make records that sound like the old records, but they're not quite so good, so it all sounds like B-sides played by old men. You know, and a good band doesn't. A good band grows and matures and changes over time. It plays to its strengths as it learns new things and new tricks. And Bloodsports and Suede themselves, you know, are a band that really did come back after a dip, and were able to pick up exactly where they left off, learning all the things that they ever did from what they'd done before, and were still bloody brilliant at it. It's a great record, and I love it to bits. And it's got Sometimes I Feel I'll Float Away, which is just incredible song. And there's no other way that I can describe it. It is, in my opinion, a great Suede album. And if you thought Suede were all about, Beautiful Ones and Trash and Diesel and Gasoline and Heroin and all that crap, there's so much more to them than that. I understand if you don't like them, but I do, and that's what matters. So album 4, The Mix, Kraftwerk. I've mentioned this before. I've mentioned that, the first time I saw Kraftwerk was at Leicester in 1992 when they played at the Polytechnic, which where I was studying. Fantastic band. Really a band that very, very much presented, their work as an entire work of art. I think there's a word, Gerschmelzstung or something. I've never pronounced that word before. I never will again, which in German translates as an entire work of art. So everything that the band did was an entire work of art, from the sleeve, the sound, the production, the sequencing, the lyrics, it all came together. Now this album it really kind of opened my eyes a little bit as to, because a lot of people thought, well, electronic music, it's all bleepy bloopy, isn't it? It's all there to be listened to at 11:30 in a nightclub, or maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and then you get a cab or the night bus home as you're coming down, crash at your mates and feel like shit the next morning. This was more around actually the sound of industry, the sound of technology, the way in which technology was able to put the world together. I could just as easily have chosen Electric Cafe, and in many respects I probably should have done, with the concept of Electric Cafe being the world of a global village that's unified by technology. It is an electric cafe around that. But The Mix was the first album I came to, and it was the greatest hits album, and I listened to that and I thought, this band are brilliant. The shows were fantastic, they were funny, they were sly, and I just, I can't say it, just opened my mind completely to certain things. Right, I'm going to have a drink. Oh, look, Mark stepped out of shot. That's a dramatic look, isn't it? Maybe, maybe not. Right. Album 3. The Twilight Sad. Nobody Wants to Be Here and Nobody Wants to Leave. I cannot tell you how good this record is. This band have changed my life, and they've changed my world. This is the clear vinyl edition that came out a couple of years ago, and I know that they're Robert Smith's favourite band. His taste in music is generally pretty good, actually, but that's not why I love them. I first got into them in 2015. They were announced as supporting editors at the London Hammersmith Apollo, and when a band announces a support band, you know what I do? I go and check them out, because I figure if a band's supporting another band, they must think they're pretty good. So I gave this a listen, and I was blown away with just how good it was. It was everything that I'd been looking for in music for ages, for years, literally. I got Suede, I'd got Frank Turner, who was still making new music at that point. I got Hope of the States, who sadly split up just as I fell in love with them, so I never really got to experience them apart from once. But the Twilight Sad, for those of you who don't know, they're a Scottish band, now a 5-piece. At the time this was recorded, they were a 3-piece, and they do dense, heavy songs, which are at the heart of it very, very gentle, very, very loving, very tender songs. But the songs are wrapped up in buckets of noise and sound, almost as if it's a protective armour that sits alongside them. And this record really, really made my life a heck of a lot better, because I listened to it. And in 2015, I was really kind of like having to. I was still dealing with some of the other things that had happened around. As I kind of mentioned, in 2013, when I was hitting the age of being 40 and dealing with things like eternal questions like, who am I, where am I, what am I going to be, how am I going to feel as I grow older? Is everything in my life now a slow descent downwards, or am I going to be able to find hope again? Am I going to be happy again? Am I going to feel comfortable with who I am? And all of those questions were things that were wrapped up inside this album, in terms of the words that he was singing, and in terms of the sonics and the production of it. So there's a great line in one of the songs where it goes, "How dare you decide what's right?" For example, if anyone's ever had a situation where someone else has tried to impose their will upon you, that's exactly how I felt. How dare you decide what's right? I make the decisions about my life. I have the agency. I have the power. I have the dominion. I get to be who I choose to be, not who you force me to be around that. And there's also, one of my favourite songs ever is the title track, Nobody Wants to Be Here and Nobody Wants to Leave. I heard the Oran Moore version of it, which is an acoustic recording, and I was just blown away, because that was just one of the best songs that I've ever heard by anybody. There is not a bad song on this album. It creates and generates a mood, a mood of both, resignation and defiance at the same time. And the bit where in Nobody Wants to Be Here, Nobody Wants to Leave, and there's kind of like this resigned sense of, so that's your decision and I have to live with it. But then at the same point it picks up straight away and it goes, right, so this is how I'm going to be, and this is how I'm going to live. And it's just, I think it's an incredible album. And I opened it and I thought there's still fantastic music out there to be discovered. being made by bands that I love. And at some point I will talk in a lot more detail about this band. I love this band. I will preach about them to anybody for any reason I can possibly think of, because they changed my life. They made me a better person. I'm more thoughtful and more considerate, I think, after hearing some of these songs, and I don't quite understand how that's happened, but it's impacted and changed how I view things, how I see things, and they're incredible live. It sounds like the roar of a jet engine taking off. I can't tell you how good they are, although I've just spent probably about 10 minutes trying to tell you how good they are. Number 2, by the way, is John Grant's Pale Green Ghosts album. Again, a more modern one. Now, you might think, as I'm old, I'll only like old stuff, but no, I came to this album probably 5 years ago. One of the greatest breakup albums ever. It's got some of the best songs ever on it, and some very, very funny, silly lyrics. It's got a beard, as we all know. Beards are brilliant. This is the green vinyl version of the album. And Pale Green Ghosts, actually, sonically, is massively influenced my John Carpenter. So much so, actually, I've done a kind of like a mix of Pale Green Ghosts, where it kind of melds into the Escape from New York, which is on here. So sonically, completely in my wheelhouse. It's like a mixture of, one of the greatest breakup albums ever made, and at the same time, it also kind of deals with all of the other things which go with that, as well as a whole bunch of glorious sonic textures. It's got a couple, some of the best songs ever written on it. It Doesn't Matter to him is one of the best songs which I've ever heard. There's a version that was recorded in the Strong Room session, which is just him and a piano, which is where I do in a covers album. That'd be the first song on there, by the way. Would be that one, and the lyric is just, it doesn't matter to him. I could be anything, but I could never win his heart again. He took away my AAA pass. I am invisible to him. And then the last line is, I still keep trying to figure out how I became irrelevant, how I got myself evicted from his heart from one day to the next. And the worst part is, even if I got an answer right now, it would not change anything, because we have become two strangers. And that's an album I really, really needed to hear. Probably about 15 years too late, but it's just bloody brilliant, and you should buy it. It's got Glacier on it. It's also got a song called I Hate This Town, and that song, by the way, the last time we performed it live, I think it was at the London O2 Arena supporting Elmo in 2008. But that song really, really spoke to me after the fact about when I left Birmingham in the year 2000. It's got some very, very funny lyrics in it, like, I hate this fucking town. You cannot even leave your fucking house without running into someone who no longer cares about you. And if you split up with somebody and you live in a town and they still live in that town and you see them around and you don't want to see them, that's the song for you. I love this album. It's brilliant. The lyrics are funny. The music is perfect. And the t-shirts, such as this one, are very, very good. Now, the last one I'll do, number 1 most important album in my life, is this. But what's that? Well, it's a white label copy of New Order's Technique from 1989. And I got into New Order January 1989 when this album came out. I had a copy of Substance I'd recorded on cassette from Birmingham Library. And the thing is with New Order is that there was always a mixture of, sadness and joy in everything that they ever did that really, clung to me completely. The songs were bright and upbeat, and the lyrics also had a kind of an inherent kind of sadness around it. And I listened to this, and I thought, this is looking at that is a piece of work that shouldn't be on a record sleeve. It should be hung in the Tate, as an image. We were looking at mass-produced works of art that were created with care and attention and vision. And the songs were great, and you could dance to them and you could sing to them, and the lyrics were straightforward and relatable, and they sounded exactly like who I wanted to be, because I was pretty miserable when I was that age. But what these songs did is that, you know, they told me that even if I clung to the misery that was in the songs, I also could dance around to them, and that happiness was possible, and that is somehow, you know, the complete harness of you know, happiness and joy and sadness and all at the same time, all kind of put everything together into one package. And at that point, you know, January 1989, I was 15 years old or thereabouts. You know, I listened to Iron Maiden, I listened to Pet Shop Boys, then I listened to New Order, and my world just you know, suddenly all the walls turned to glass, and everything became bigger, and I just understood that I had, you know, an enormous amount of things that I could experience. So that's my top 10. Going down 10 to 1, obviously. Pet Shop Boys, actually. Number 9, John Carpenter, Anthology, although that came out in 2016. Number 8, The Wonder Stuff, Hop. Number 7, The Wedding Present, Take Fountain. You alright there, indie boy? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, mate. Number 6, Manic's Holy Bible. Number 5, Suede, Bloodsports, 2013. Number 4, Kraftwerk's The Mix. Number 3, The Twilight Sad. Number 2, John Grant, hopefully who I get to be when I grow up. And number 1, New Order's Technique, there from 1989. I'm going to wrap up now. That's been my lunch hour today. Thank you very much for listening, and I will catch up again with you soon. As normal, questions, comments, leave the abuse to yourself. It looks like some people quite enjoy these, so I'm going to carry on doing them until such time as I either get bored or get blown out of the airlock into outer space by Flash Gordon, or more correctly by Ming the Merciless when he is tired of me. And I will see you again soon. Thank you, and bye.